I've been looking forward to this one for a while, man, because following you in your MMA career and familiar with your social media praise, I know you kind of sprinkle in some posts there about the mental side of things and how important it is.
Yeah.
When you kind of hear the term sports psychology or mental side of sports, mental side of being an athlete, what's like really the first thing that comes to your mind?
You know, I don't know. That's kind of a hard question or answer. Like, so like for me, the mental side is harder than the physical side. You know what I mean? Like, I know that's not the case for everyone, but I mean, it's the physical side is so easy for me, anyways. It's fun. It's easy. There's a lot of struggles and like keeping your mind on the right path. You know, it's easy to get discouraged, and so having that, mental fortitude and you know, I even started talking to a mental coach,
Okay.
and things like that help a lot. So I just try to encourage people, and motivate people to be the best that they can be and whatnot.
How long ago did you get introduced to the mental coach?
So I've been working with him for probably close to 4 months or so now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Was there something that like sparked you reaching out to this coach?
Yeah, so that last loss I took in my fight, that's what really sparked it. I know I have all the physical tools and everything I need to be successful, and I believe that 100%. It's just a matter of working on and making sure your focus is where it needs to be the day it needs to be there. So yeah, that's something I've been working really hard on.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because I mean, the mental side, obviously, you talked about it a bit there, how important it is. But I think it's hard
Yeah,
for people to kind of grasp that because comparing it to the physical side, like how you said, it's easier, it's more fun, and it's like a tangible thing where you can like see somebody
yeah,
strike, you can see them grapple, you can see them bench press, whatever it may be, and you can measure that.
yeah,
You can't
for
necessarily
sure.
measure like your confidence. Like you can feel it, but you can't say like I'm an 8.2 today or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I think it's the toughest thing to work on, but like you've kind of probably experienced the past 4 months, probably the most beneficial.
Oh yeah, I definitely love the results I've been getting. I feel like my mindset has changed almost completely. Obviously, everything in life is a work in progress, and I'm still working on everything. But I feel I'm very confident and ready and excited for my next fight, and to go out there and kind of put it to the test a little bit
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Do you
Although
notice?
it's something I can put to the test every single day. It's a thing that it goes in all areas of your life that will be beneficial. So yeah, I like doing it. I'm really glad that I started working with this guy. His name's Salt Garrison. My coach actually introduced me to him and kind of lined me up with him. And yeah, it's definitely been a great thing so far.
Yeah, man. I like how you mentioned that because I was about to mention it, how you can practice it every day. Much
Yeah.
like, I think that's also another misconception some people have about like the mental side of things. Your mental
Yeah.
ability is much like how I mentioned before. You can work on your striking, your grappling. If you're a different athlete, your bench press, your 40-yard dash, whatever it is, you can work on those things day
Yeah.
to day. You can still do it with the mental game, right? Like if you're a practice, off day, whatever it is. For you personally, what are some of the most beneficial? I don't know if you have kind of like any mental exercises or just overall strategies that have been the most helpful over the past 4 months.
Yeah, so what Salt has me work on a lot is staying in the moment, and he says master the moment. And when something bad happens, instead of being like, "Damn, this sucks," like thinking of it as a bad thing, he tells you, "How is this working for you?" And then instead of viewing like I fractured my orbital not too long ago, and he had me write a big list of the benefits of fracturing my orbital. You know what I mean? Like those type of things. And anytime like a situation that you perceive as bad or, unfavorable, that's kind of the first steps that I take is, okay, what are the benefits of this? Because he tells me you can't have all good, you can't have all bad. You want to stay in the middle ground, the middle zone, not get too high, not get too low. And so when something I perceive as bad happens, I try to go through and list some benefits of it. And same thing is when something great happens, I go through and I try listing, the not so good things about it, because there's always both, you know what I mean? So those are some things, little practice things that you can do every day to help you, stay in that neutral, middle ground, neutral type of thinking.
I love that. I love that concept of kind of staying grounded to a sense, staying neutral, like you mentioned. And it kind of reminds me too, and to tie it back a bit, 'cause I know you mentioned the mental things that you're learning, and specifically for MMA. I mean, they apply to all areas of life. And I know, like I described to you before, following Gary Vaynerchuk for so long, he talked about that a lot too, that in life, like if you get on Instagram a really positive comment, it's like, cool, move on. If you get a really negative comment, it's like, cool, move on. I think that's such a key piece to anything in life is not getting caught up in the value of it. Because that's when you start having those highs, which are cool, but then those lows come as well, and those aren't cool as well.
Yep. How he describes it, like I said, you can't have all one thing and none of the other. So, when you do get too high, something's going to come along and humble you. So, staying in that middle ground where you're not too high, not too low, you kind of just stay on a steady plane. That's the ideal zone to be in is what I'm learning.
Yeah. And man, this is a topic that comes up a lot in these interviews I do. Thinking back to kind of when I've coached or consulted with younger athletes, they kind of have a perception, I think, that for professional athletes, it's all great. And they try to chase that perfection. But I mean, specifically in MMA, unless your name's Khabib, like you're going to have a loss eventually in your career, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's one of the,
definitely.
that's one of the, I guess, concepts that I try and really grain into the minds of younger kids is you can practice and aim for perfection, but you also have to be realistic that if the top guys in the game, no matter what sport it is, if they're not perfect, you can't really expect yourself to be perfect either. There's I guess a part of being of accepting that you're not perfect to get over that mental barrier.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the cool thing about MMA. There's so many aspects to it, striking, grappling, wrestling, and then combining it to make it work all together. Unlike football, you can be, running back, you're working pretty much the same, like few things. Obviously everyone has their own little, flair, but football, basketball, if you're in that position, you're pretty much doing the same things that you started when you're in, little league all the way up to the pros. And like MMA, it's constant evolving. There's so many aspects to it, so it's kind of like a hard thing to master. So there's always, that's the good thing about it. There's always something you can work on. Always something to do. But it is a hard thing to master, which it also can be a little discouraging at times.
It's almost like it's the sport within the sport. Like you have MMA as the sport, but then within it, you got guys that are jiu-jitsu specialists, which is a completely different sport that I'm assuming. I mean, I'm not the most well-versed guy in MMA, but like jiu-jitsu is drastically different than something like Muay Thai or just karate or boxing, whatever it is, right? Kickboxing. It's that sport within the sport. And it kind of reminds me of a quote that I always like to share in this podcast that, forget who said it, but I know the quote goes, if you have nothing to work on, it means you're not looking hard enough. And I think MMA is the perfect example for it. I mean, if you can probably just break down kind of the main areas you're kind of working on right now, but in a sport like MMA, I mean, if you're not constantly evolving, if you're not constantly testing your body and your mind and pushing it to the limits, you're gonna fall behind, because there's so many people out there working on so many different things that you can't take that time off.
That's absolutely true.
I know you mentioned one of the kind of main benefits you've gotten from a mental coach so far was kind of, again, it sounds like you're looking at things more optimistically if something bad happens rather than pessimistically, like looking at the pros and cons of everything that happens in life. For you,
Yeah.
would this be something that in the past you would feel before a fight, during the fight, after a fight, a combination of all three, or kind of where did you feel beforehand your mental struggles really were kind of weighing down?
Yeah. So I feel like my mental struggles was never like a confidence issue. You know, if anything, maybe a little bit overconfident. You know, I feel like I do really well training. I train with some of the best fighters in the world. Uh, you know, I just sometimes I don't necessarily like put the focus on that day I like in that moment. Like when I'm training, I know I have a fight. I'm training hard for that day. Everything I do great, hard, you know, I could have the best camp, you know. For my perfect example, my last fight, everything was my grappling, my striking, my strength and conditioning. Everything I did all camp long was my best I've ever had and felt, and you know, flowed and everything else. So I went in that fight. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna win this fight. Like, here we go. Like, I trained hard. Everything was great. You know, I was me and my fiance were also looking at houses, which that wasn't like necessarily planned out to be looking that week at a house and everything. It just kind of came into our lap. But you know, I'm looking at houses and you know planning to spend this money that haven't even fought and made quite yet. And you know, that's me getting a little too high. You know, I was coming off a great victory my last fight before that. You know, and I'm just thinking, you know, here we go. I'm about to hit this roll and things are about to start happening. And, you know, like I was saying, I got too high, you know, kind of overlooked my opponent. I wasn't necessarily in that moment. I was beyond that moment, looking past it. And, you know, it bit me in the butt. He came out and he was, in that moment, he was ready to go and he caught me off guard, got me in that submission in the first round. And, you know, that's the way it goes. And that's a lesson learned. And, yeah, you know, now going forward, I know how to be better mentally prepared for those type of situations and all that good stuff.
For sure, for sure. It definitely reminds me of what we talked about a couple minutes ago about the highs and lows, where it's kind of like the higher the high is, the harder the fall. So for
Oh,
someone
yeah.
like you can probably attest to that. We're kind of going into that fight, like you felt on top of the world or whatever it is. Like that's, I mean, and that's somewhat appropriate as well. I guess kind of
Yeah.
hearing that you recall that story, the part that maybe wasn't so appropriate was looking past the fight. I mean, it's cool to
Yeah.
stay confident looking at the fight, but as you're looking
Yeah.
past it, that's
Yep.
maybe where some of the I don't know the right word here, but some of the misguided vision or
Yeah.
misguided
I just wasn't as focused as I needed to be in that exact moment, which took away from some of my intensity and things like along those lines that needed to be there in that
yeah.
moment. You know what I mean?
And that's, I mean, it's easier said than done, obviously, to keep
Yeah.
that focus because I think I was victim to this a lot before I started this podcast, before I got into sports psychology and everything more as like a teenager growing up. I looked at athletes and I viewed them as their life was just their sport. But I mean, obviously athletes, like this is just their job. Like MMA, it's a fun passion for you, probably
Yeah.
like your dream, but it's also a job and you have things
Yeah.
outside of it as well that can kind of weigh you down or kind of occupy your mind. So it's really helped my perspective talking to different athletes, getting more into sports psychology, that if you see an athlete struggle on the field, it might be something off the field that's distracting them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Especially, you know, at this level where it is your job. That's how you make a living. You know, it kind of brings a lot more pressure onto you. Yeah, you started doing it because you love it, but when it turns into your job, you know, some things do change a little bit. And like I said, it adds a little more extra pressure on you to, you know, perform, you know, do this, do that, because you need that money.
Yeah,
But, you know, nonetheless, I love the life I live. I wouldn't have it any other way.
for sure.
It's just man, trying to figure out how to manage those and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I pivot for a second here, because when I was going through your social media again a couple of days ago, I came across one of your Instagram posts, and you had a cool quote about the mental side of the game. You probably remember it as I start reading it, but it read that the path that leads to what we truly desire is long
Yeah.
and difficult, but only by following that path do we achieve our goal. And I
Yeah.
think that's such, like, I don't know if when you posted that, if you were thinking about specifically just your last fight, just your whole career in general, but I think it's such an important quote for people to understand and read
Yeah.
1,000 times a day.
Yeah.
That nothing good comes easy.
Yeah.
If if everything good came easy, everybody would have it. Everybody would be a pro
Yeah.
MMA fighter. Everyone would be MMA world champion. And obviously
Yeah.
not. Were you thinking about just that last fight in general, or more
No,
so just your career?
just everything. You know, I feel like everything in life I've always earned. I've never had anything handed to me. I feel like, you know, obviously I've had some good accomplishments and some great highs and everything else, but I feel like everything is kind of always the hardest way possible, it seems like, for me sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine. That's life. Is just, you know, like that quote perfectly states, like, sometimes the hardest things are, you have to just stick through and ride it out, and then, you know, at the end of the tunnel is when you get what you truly desire. So
And I got to imagine too, I mean, in the moment, I think adversity sucks, but
yeah.
looking back on it, I think it makes the journey 10 times more enjoyable. Like somebody
Yeah.
going through losses, somebody going through failures and proving to themselves and proving to others that they're able to overcome it, I think is a lot more satisfying, like internally for somebody. Because I think if
Oh yeah.
somebody's in a game for external factors, money, fame, whatever it is, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You're in
Yeah.
it because you truly enjoy it and you truly love challenging yourself and getting over those hurdles. I mean, that's, to me personally, at least, that's 10, 15, 20 times more enjoyable than if somebody just kind of gave me a free pass to everything and everything was so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you there.
During the course of your MMA career to date, who would you say have either been kind of the biggest influences when it came to the mental side of the game? I know we've talked about Sal Garrison a bit, your mental coach.
Yeah.
Does anybody else kind of stick out, other fighters? I know you're part of Elevation, which, I mean, have some killers in that camp.
Yeah.
So I know you got a lot of good role models there, but does any kind of couple of fighters or just people growing up that you watch on TV kind of stick out where their mental game, you try and maybe take a few clues from that?
Well, you know, obviously I give my coach, Vinny Lopez and Cody Donovan, a shout out too, because
Yeah.
they helped me out a lot, you know, on the physical and mental side of things. Neil Magny has also been a great role model in, you know, especially because I'm originally from Illinois. I moved to Colorado on a whim, and, you know, Neil Magny was kind of the first person I met when I moved here, and he actually gave me a place to live, and I ended up
Wow.
living with him, and, you know, we're great friends now, and he's always been a great friend and role model for me. He's someone that I really look up to. Who else is it? I don't know. Really, everyone on the team, really, we all help each other one way or the other, you know, and both physical and mental side of things. You know, Gaethje, he always, you know, has given me great advice and obviously great training. You know, Curtis Blades, he's someone that I lived with for a while, and he's one of my really good friends also that, you know, I feel like I could go to him and talk to him about anything. You know, Lavelle Simpson is another good friend of mine and teammate that is also the same page as great advice and great training partner. You know, there's quite a bit. You know, obviously my parents, my mom and dad have always been very supportive and helpful. You know, I wouldn't be where I'm at without them. I believe that fully. So, you know, there's just everyone along the
Yeah.
journey, you know.
You mentioned moving to Colorado on a whim. Was that MMA related or just
Yeah.
personal? Okay.
No, it was fully for MMA. So when I very first, well, like I said, I'm originally from Illinois. I was in my hometown. My coach there, you know, I was 4-0 pro at that time, and I knew that I needed to kind of expand to a bigger city and gym and everything, and then kind of expand my training and training partners and everything else. Just because I come from a small town, and the opportunity is a little lower there than
Mm.
obviously somewhere like here where you train with world class fighters.
I was
I
gonna
was
say
going
because
to
when
Roof.
I hear the words Illinois, the first thing that comes to my mind is Chicago. I'm like, that's not a small city at all, but
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
not
that's
from
what everyone
Chicago.
thinks. Yeah, I'm from a small town called
Okay.
Sterling Rock Falls area. There's only like 15,000 people, I think, 10 to 15. I'm not exactly sure, but it's smaller, a lot smaller than here.
Yeah.
um, so like I was saying, I knew that I needed to expand and move. I was cross training up in the Quad Cities in the Iowa area at Militich Fighting Systems. At the time, that was still a gym that was up and going. And then I was also going to Rufus Sport in Milwaukee. And originally, I was going to move to Milwaukee and just train there because it's a lot closer and everything else. And I liked it.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed the team there and the coaching and everything else. But then my coach was like, "Hey, there's this really good team out in Colorado. They have a really good thing going on right now. Why don't you go out there for a week and try it out and see how you like it?" And I'm like, "All right, cool. I like traveling and going on little training trips a lot." And so they set that up, and I go out to Colorado, try it out, and at the beginning of the week, I was just like, "Oh, it's just a training trip. It is what it is." By the end of the week, I was like, man, I want to move here. Everything felt right. The coaches, the team, the facility, just everything felt really good. I loved the city and everything. So I got back on a Sunday, went to work on a Monday. I put in for a transfer. And at the time, I worked for a Walmart distribution center. And the out-of-state transfers are pretty tough to get. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this, but what's it hurt to put in for this transfer, And but they literally called me the very next day and was like, hey, you got this transfer. When can you move? I was like, well, when do you need to know by? Like, we need to answer by tomorrow. So this brings me back to Neil. When we were here training, he's like, hey, I rent out rooms, if you guys come again and you can rent a room, it's cheaper than, a hotel and this and that. And so I hit him up. I was like, hey, man, I think I'm going to move there. And at this time, he was getting ready to fight Hector Lombard. And he's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I got room opening up and everything else. I'm like, all right, cool. So I packed everything up and I moved, I think like 2 or 3 weeks later. And, been here ever since. And it has been like the best decision of my life.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. You mentioned driving, like you lived in Illinois, and
Yeah.
then you had a camp or a gym in Milwaukee and a gym in Iowa.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot of commuting.
Yeah, it is. So
I mean, just
the gym,
the mental fatigue or even the physical fatigue with that much,
yeah,
like obviously I should probably step back from it because I'm being from Canada and I know like Ontario is like the size of like 10 different states put together
yeah.
in America. So maybe my perception of like traveling state to state isn't the most accurate, but it still seems like quite the commute from like Illinois to Milwaukee to Iowa back and
Yeah,
forth and everything.
yeah. So where the gym was in Iowa was only like 45 minutes to an hour away from where I lived. So that wasn't too bad, but the commute to Rufus Sport, and usually when I would go there, I'd be there for at least a week because it was like I think I don't exactly remember, but like a 3 or 4 hour drive. So that one obviously is a little longer. But then I ended up out in Colorado, which is a 12 and a half, 13-hour drive
Yeah.
from, but obviously I live here. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, it all worked out though.
I mean, you mentioned rooming with Neil, rooming with Curtis. I mean, kind of
Yeah.
being at that time newer to the professional scene, I guess, as an MMA
Yeah.
fighter. Walk me through, I
Yeah.
guess, what that felt like because I can't like I'm imagining myself in your shoes, and I wouldn't be able to string two words together. If I'm just like this kind of new kid on the block, right? I'm rooming with
Yeah.
professional MMA fighters. Like, kind of just walk me through those first couple of weeks, and also
Yeah.
maybe um, what were maybe some of the most eye-opening things that you kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at a pro MMA fighter of what you took from that and tried to incorporate in your own prep?
Yeah. So when I moved to Colorado, when I was talking about that week I came out training, that was literally the first time I've ever even been to Colorado in my life. And then I picked up and moved here, and I was moving into a house that I've never even seen with my own eyes. I've never been to the location or anything around. So when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. I mean, obviously I knew Neil, but we weren't like friends yet. So when I moved here, I literally just went and trained all day with the team, to hit every practice I could. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have anything better to do, so I just went and trained with everyone. And then Neil, he's a great role model. He's a really hard worker. He's going to all these practices, and he's where I wanted to be. He's successful in the UFC and everything. So I'm like, just do what he does, So that was definitely, I think, a key to getting to where I'm at now. Is when I got here, I worked. When you're the new guy, not too many people are paying attention to you yet. You have to put in the time, pay your dues, and type of thing. Yep. So, I just went to every single practice that I could. Sometimes I was training 3-4 times a day, and I didn't even have a fight or anything, so it's just practice, and
tell people when you love it, it doesn't feel like work. I bet you, it just feels like the best time of your life.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I think that story you just shared there really speaks to, I want to say, the inevitability of sacrifice to being a pro athlete. Like there is a certain level of sacrifice, and I think a lot of people, not the first thing I think people think of when they see professional athletes on TV, like, oh, all the sacrifice that they took to get there. But I think if every athlete came out and told their story, like year by year, and the amount of sacrifice they went through, I think like it would open a lot of people's eyes of just how much blood, sweat, and tears as a professional athlete you have to put into your sport 24/7. That's just the physical side, and then we're here talking about the mental side, and that's just a whole other ball game, right? It's just crazy how
it's a lot. And I feel like MMA is like even more of a step up on the crazy scale compared to like pro, NFL players, NBA players, MLB baseball players, because we really aren't like making the money that they're making. I was just recently, this past year, basically, that I didn't have to work. Wow. And, still train all the time, still do all this, and, and have a full-time job at the same time. So, it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of sacrifice. I'm really close with my family. I have 3 nephews now and a niece, and, I'm living in a different state. I don't get to see them. It takes a lot. And like he said, the work that it takes to even get here, just being broke all the time, having to work a job, but still putting in the hours and training, being worn out and tired. Like it is a lot, but it is what it is. It'll make you stronger.
If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Man, that's so true, because even kind of getting more familiar with the sport of MMA. I mean, I watched MMA my whole life, but more so following really hardcorely, I would say the past 3 or 4 years, it really opened my eyes how many guys kind of have to have side gigs to kind of keep themselves afloat between just living expenses, between gyms, coaching, travel, food, whatever
training,
it is, right? Training,
house,
I mean, that's and when
it's
when you compare it to the money that other sports get, I mean, I think all athletes deserve the money they get, but I mean, you're hard pressed to find a sport that there's more risk of injury than MMA, where you go into a fight, and unless you're like Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo, like you're guaranteed to get an injury in that fight.
It's kind of a crazy thing. You'd think we would get paid the most we have to go through, but
Right.
it's all right. It's still growing. It'll hopefully get there.
Yeah. Yeah. All part of the process.
Yeah.
Anyways, man, I think that's a good point to end it on, because I think we had a lot of cool nuggets here for not only just aspiring MMA fighters, but I think athletes in general, and hearing how sacrifice plays a role, hearing how you have to kind of look at the good and bad of everything. Something's
Yeah.
presented to you that seems like the best thing in the world, it's probably too good to be true. If something
Yeah.
presented to you that's the worst thing in the world, it's definitely not the worst thing in the world. I think those are
Yeah.
some really cool concepts for a lot of athletes to kind of take home and apply themselves. So I appreciate you stopping by, Austin, and I'm looking forward
Yeah. No
to
problem.
the next fight news and seeing you back in the octagon.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.